Okay, so this is a quick little demo for the Wonderware. Now I've already set up a Siemens controller for a very simple little program. It just has our start stop, and we got the start process. And then when we're running with the start process, that allows the timer to time out. And right now it's at 15 seconds. And then we have a reset. So we have just start, stop, and reset. Now also I have this start going into these are one-shot edge trigger devices, and it's a pretty good thing for the Siemens controllers if you would try to do that. You don't have to for this demonstration, but you should put that on your programs. But the one thing when you're setting up for the Wonderware is you have to make sure of one thing. So you're going to come up with your own program for the light stack, but I just want to show you how to configure the Wonderware. One of the things you have to do is go into the configured device right underneath the CPU for the PLC. Go into properties, and it should, well, let's see. Yeah, this isn't getting us where we want to be. So if I click on here for configured device, I should see that picture, and then I see all these things down here that just talk about parameters that we control. We want to take a look at protection. We want to make sure this is full access to the PLC, but the other thing that we need to make sure of is below it for this connection mechanism. Make sure this is checked. If this isn't checked, you're going to have problems with the Wonderware. Now we're going to run both simultaneously off the same computer. So now I've got my little Siemens program, and that should be ready to go. And now I'm going to fire up Wonderware. And this is pretty simple to use. Easy to use is easy to say. But what we're going to do is, and it's going to start out in the last program, and everything has this demo program, and you want to make sure that you start out with a new program. So I'm just going to put this on my local drive. So, and I'm just going to give it a name of, I don't know, Wonderware demo. And that's all we're going to call it. Now, when you come in here, the first thing that you have to do, it's going to just come up and it's going to give you a screen that's going to be the size of your window. Just leave it at that default. Now, the first things that you have to do when it comes up is you have this screen. Now, if you highlight it, then right-click it and it'll say Insert. Now, we want to create just a main screen. You're only going to need one screen. So call it main, and for the runtime properties, you can just repeat it down here. And that'll get you into this screen, which kind of looks like a grid. Now, here, you want to be mainly in the graphics is what you're going to use. And you can do things with grid properties. These rectangles and round ellipses, you can do some things with that. But what you want is this thing with the active objects, and then also in these symbols. But right here, we're just going to put text down, just regular text, and we'll call it main screen. And, you know, if we highlight that, then we can do some other things with it in properties. And what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to change the font. I'm going to make it bigger and bolder. So that'll get us that. Now, for our graphics again, the very first thing you need to do is highlight the button. And then you can put your button anywhere, but you can drag it for how large you want it. Now, we're just going to put this button. We need this one button so we can, when we go into the run mode, we can get out of the run mode. So what we're going to do is we're going to change it and put the text to exit, and we're going to change the font. We're going to make that bigger, and we're going to make that red. Not that we really need to, but if we had a number of buttons, we want it to be obvious. Now, the other thing you need to do is after you have it, and it'll show you what the button looks like, go into Command. And here you can put in some commands. These you'll have to read up or watch videos on, but right now we need this, and this is VB script. You need to put $ and then shut down. And as you get close enough, it'll highlight. So you highlight shutdown and then do the parenthesis, open and closed. And that's all you need. And then so we can go in here and it'll say save screen, and we'll save it and we'll give it the name of main. And we save that. Now, for our screens, it'll appear under main. And now if we went into the run, which is this arrow here, we can run. And now what happens is it covers the full screen, which is a problem. You can't get out of this unless you hit the exit. That's why you need that exit there. So now for writing this, we don't want the button, we want push buttons. And we're going to put in our start and stop. Well, we highlight it. And we'll go in here and we'll make this our start. And we'll call it PB underscore. And you have to have either an underscore or no spaces. That's the way Wonderware works. So it says this tag doesn't exist. Would you like to create it? Yes. And we're going to create a Boolean. And that's okay. And the configuration, we just want to change the text to start. Change this to start. And now you can see, well, if you go back in here, this is a momentary push button, which is what we normally use. You can also have these to be latched, or you can have them like do toggle. You can have normally open or normally closed. I usually leave them at normally open and just change the logic in the PLC. And we can take a look at what the PLC has. Now, the color is green and red. We don't want red, but to know that we pressed it, we kind of want a different color of green. So we'll hit OK, and we'll just exit out. Now we've got our start button. Now, to get the stop button, all we do is hold the control key down, and now we've got a second button. And now we can configure that, and we'll change the start to stop. Now again, it'll say it doesn't exist, do you want to create it? And these are all Booleans. And that's okay. And the configuration, we're going to make it red. We're going to call it start or stop. I'm going to call this one stop. And instead of making it off green, I'll just make it like light gray. So we know that we hit that button, it'll go from red to gray. And that guy's done. Now we also said we're going to have a reset button. So we'll put reset over here. Do the same thing, we'll call it PB reset. And that one doesn't exist, we'll create that. And all these are going to be Booleans. And we'll go into configuration. Now we'll make this one like a deep blue. And so we've got all our controls that we had in the program. And if we look at our program, go into program. So we've got our start, our stop. We've also got our reset. Now we've also got the start process and timeout. And start process just means that we've done the start push button. Oh, and you can see that since I'm using more normally open, when I press it, we're going to use these as normally closed contacts for when we press it. You know, normally when you do a project and the stop button is a normally closed, this would be a normally open contact. But since we have it configured differently in the Wonderware, we're going to leave it at that. But anyway, we've got our controls here, and if you want to move things, you have to be inside one of the boxes as you move them. So what I want to do is, now we've got our buttons, we want to put in some symbols. And if you go into the symbols here, and you go into the system symbols, it has all these different, it has different types of buttons, icons, meters. For instance, if you wanted a pump, it'll show you all these different pumps. And you can have red and green, so when it's on it'll be green, when it's off it'll be red. Now what we want for right now is I want to go into a pilot light, and I want to show when our system is on. So I'm just going to, I don't know, grab one of these guys. And it comes in really big. And what you have to do is right click, go to properties, unclick that. Now what we want to do is, this will just have it blink slowly, but what we want to do is we want to give it a tag, and we're going to give this one the start process tag. And again, it'll say that doesn't exist. We want to create it. It wants to be a Boolean. And we're good there. Now, and we'll make it smaller since it's really obnoxiously large as it is. So now we have our controls, and this will tell us when we're actually on. Now, other things you can do for, that's a pilot light. They also have these other things. And if we just went into an ellipse, and we can kind of make it round. Now, over here, we can make this have some functionality by these animations over here. And what we want to do is we want to give it color. And if we go back here and click it, it's going to say you can have different colors based on whether it's on or off, a 1 or a 0. Now the expression that we want is we want to go in and we want our project tags and we want to make it the start process. And we'll make it, instead of red, just kind of make it gray when it's off and green when it's on. So now when the start process goes on, both of these should function the same. Now again, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to hold down the control key and move it over here. And what I'm going to do for this one, for its properties, is I'm going to change it and I'm going to make it that timeout that we had. And so when our timer is timing out, and again this one doesn't exist, so we're going to create that. It'll be a Boolean. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to make it yellow when it's counting, and I'm also going to make it blink. And I'll make it blink slow, I guess. And then when it counts out, when it's finished counting, I'll give it this kind of violet color. And let's see, that's all about I need. Well, and I'll go back to graphics and so we know what this is, I'll give that a title, and this will be the timeout. And you can see what, so that'll show you when it's timing out. These are both start process. Now another graphic that you can put up here is this thing, this smart message. And so it was a little slow there, but I'll get a message, and for this I'll click on it, and what's our tag? We're going to go to the start process again. Now what's our message? Now again, it's just a Boolean, so it's going to be 1 and 0. So for a 0 I'll say system off, and for a 1 I'll say system on. And for here, for the text for off, it'll be red. For the system on, make it the bright green. And that'll be okay. And let's make the font a little bit bigger. It's 10, about 14, and black, bold. So now that gives us pretty good. So now when we run it, we should get all these to run out. Now that is our main screen. What we have to do, and you get all that in the graphics, now what we have to do is we have to go into the comms and configure our driver. So again, you highlight it, right click, and we add remove drivers. Now we are starting out with the Siemens. If you're using Allen Bradley, it's the Allen Bradley CIP. For the Siemens, you have to go down, and it's the Siemens Ethernet. So you click that, you say select it, and that's all you need to do. Now if you go into drivers, you'll see SIP. Now when you go in there, you'll see a driver sheet. Here's where you configure your tags. And when we go in there, remember we have the start, stop, and if you click on one of these, it'll show you what the tags are. So I'm going to go into start. Now my I/O address from my program is, for start it's 0.0, and it's a global memory. For stop, it's M0.3. For my reset, it is 0.5. For my start process, it's 0.4. And my last one is the timeout, and that is 0.6. And now what we have to do is to talk to the unit, we have to put in the IP address. So it's 168 or 192.168.0.1. Now you have to put in colon, and now it's 0:1. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight that, copy and paste. And if you're using the Allen Bradley, all you have to do is put 1100 colon and then the IP address. And there's some information in the write-up. And how do we get that? If we look at the Siemens controller and we go back to the configuration here, when you just look at the configuration of the device, it'll show you that it's rack 0 and it's in slot 1. And so in this Wonderware, after the IP address, it's what rack is it in and then what slot is it in. So you need to have that. Now once you have that, you can close it and it'll say save changes, yes. And we don't need that guy, and we should be pretty much ready to go. So now, if we look at our program again, we'll just compile it, make sure there's no errors. We'll download it. And again, when you're dealing with the Siemens, I already have something in there. Okay, so it should be loaded. I'll go online with it. And then I'm going to turn on the monitoring so we can see what's going on. And actually I was running the program before, so I'll stop it and run it. And that way we'll turn everything off. So when we go into Wonderware, all we have to do is go into the run. And now this is what it shows. And this is actually, this is a 0, it shows blink, but somehow we have this one isn't correctly configured. So let's go out of there and let's see what's wrong with this guy. So this one still shows slow blink. It should be start process. So not sure what happens there, but we'll go into the run again. Okay, so now the system is off. Because the timer is at 0, it's just showing the slow blink there. We'll go into start, and the start comes on. Now it's still blinking. This shows on, this shows on, and when this gets out to its timeout, this will turn from blinking yellow to blue. And, well, that's violet. Okay, we stop the system. And sometimes you have to hold it down a little bit to actually get it to off, because it's some interaction with the software isn't quite as fast. But again, now the start process all shows system off and the light is blinking. If we hit start again, these will come on and the light will time out in 15 seconds. And that's just the basic way you can go. Now for what you want to do, for the light stack, you want the start-stop stuff. You probably want to put a light in here. Now we're going to, you're going to have to put, instead of this blinky light, you're going to have to find, and they do have a stack light in there, you'll have to search for it. And then you'll put a couple more buttons. Instead of this being a reset, and reset the counter, we have one where you can count long and blink fast. But you'll get to work with it, but it's pretty cool. You should like it. And so that's a little demo. Have fun.